Thank you very much for that. I think those are some very powerful statistics. And so in just a second, we're going to open it up to questions and comments from you all. But I want you to think about what those statistics mean to you and sort of what that means to your family and your friends as well. Finally on the panel, we have Dr. Eugene P. Walker. He's a former Georgia State legislator, and now he's Chief of Strategy for the DMC. And with the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice based in Atlanta, Georgia. Let's give him a warm round of applause.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you know, my name is Gene Walker, and I want to tell you just a little bit about me and what I plan to do. I'm from Upson County, Georgia, a place called Thomaston. And I'm not going to cite one statistic to you. I'm going to ultimately talk to you about a true story, and that's my grandma Emma. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge a few things. I want you to know that in my work life, I was Commissioner of Juvenile Justice for the state of Georgia. I was responsible for all of the juvenile detention facilities in the state. And I did that for 5 years. And after that, the governor appointed me to the State Board of Pardons and Parole. And that was a tremendously challenging position for me. We had the ultimate authority in the state of not only determining who would stay in prison and get out of prison, but who would be executed. And I wouldn't want any of you to have to make that type decision, but most importantly, I don't want you to be in a position where one would have to make that decision for you. Since that time, and I retired and became a member of the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice, working with my good friend Addie, they appointed us domestic strategists for disproportionate minority confinement or contact. It was painful to me as both commissioner and a member of the Board of Pardons and Parole that most of the people I dealt with in those critical and I call almost enslaved positions were people who looked just like me. So we decided, working with Addie, that we were going to take this national organization of black law enforcement people and the faith community and raise up this issue on a national level, disproportionate minority confinement. To us, that's a crisis. This is a wake-up call. I can't tell you the joy I felt in listening to my beautiful lady sing, I Believe, and then to hear Miss Ashley with her poems, and I don't know if Ashley is left. And then to hear my little brothers here, Kenneth and Amos and them with their rap song. And all of these marvelous things, and my sister who helped liberate us where we could sit at any lunch counter we want to in this country. So these are stimulating things. These are things that connote our history and things we can latch to. But the one thing that we all know is that we got too many black folks going to prison and too many black folks in prison. The other thing we know is that ain't nobody going to correct that problem but us. Now, you may not know that, so I'm going to repeat it again. No one, the president, the senator, your mama, your daddy, nobody but us individually can correct that problem. So my good brothers and sisters, I have agreed to mentor 2 young people in my county of DeKalb, a young man and a young girl, and The hardest job I have in mentoring them is listening to their hip hop. I do not understand a word of it. I like the beat, but I don't know what they say. And he is so confused, and he just rapping and all that kind of stuff in the car. I only tolerate it because I love it. I don't like the music. So my appeal to the hip-hop people is to include my grandmama in our hip-hop to hope. I was raised by a lady in Thomaston, Georgia, my grandma Emma. When I was coming up, I didn't have a daddy. I still don't know who my daddy may be. But I was raised by my grandmama. And she made certain that I had a place to stay and good food to eat. I can see today the collard greens and the candied yams and all of the black-eyed peas and cornbread that was just like cake that my grandmama fixed for me. And Addie, you'll be pleased to know, I had to find a wife like my grandmama. My wife cooked the same way.
All right.
But the beautiful thing about Grandma Emma was that, now I realize that, as ugly as I was, she made me think I was handsome and good looking. When I would come home and all them old dudes had been telling me how knock-kneaded and ugly I was, and I would tell her about it with tears in my eyes, she'd rub me on the head and tell me, you don't pay them old jealous people no mind. They just don't talk like you, and they don't look as good as you, so they're jealous. That's why they're picking on you. Do you know I believe that?
Yes. Yes.
So when I finished high school, Drake High School, the only thing in the world I wanted to do was to take care of Grandma Emma. So I got a job at a place called Stevens Service Station. And there were $25 a week. As soon as Mr. Stevens gave me his $25 for my work, I would take it and give it to Grandma Emma. I knew I was doing the greatest thing in the world for my Grandma Emma. And a coach from Clark College by the name of Coach Epps came to Thomaston that summer, and he asked Mr. Stevens if he could talk to me while I was reading that truck, and Mr. Stevens permitted me to talk to him. And Coach Epps said, son, I hear you can play football and basketball, and if you agree to do that, I'll give you a scholarship to Clark College in Atlanta. I'm in Thomaston, Georgia. And I told him, thanks, but no thanks. He said, well, now this is an important decision. I got to go down to Fort Valley, Georgia, which was about 45, 50 miles from me, and I'll be back through here tomorrow, and I want you to let me know what you think. I said, well, I'm telling you, I don't want to go. So he said, well, I'm still coming back tomorrow. When I got home, eating some of them collard greens, Grandma Emma asked me, who was that man that came to see me? How she found out, I'll never know. And I told her, I said, some man from Atlanta who told me that if I come up there and get my lesson and play football and basketball, then I wouldn't have to pay to go to college. And she said, when are you leaving? I said, I told that man I'm not going. I'm going to stay here. I'm taking care of you. Grandma said, you going to go to that school up there, or you going to have to find you another place to live? God, I can't tell you the pain I felt. I thought this lady was crazy. I was giving her all the money I earned. I was taking care of her. But you could not argue with my mama. No such thing as arguing back. I couldn't let her know how upset I was, grit my teeth and all that stuff, because she would have given me a backhand lick and done damage to me. So I want you to know, the next day I told that man I was going to Atlanta. And I went to Clark College. Young people, that's the best thing that ever happened. It took me 2 years to grow into the knowledge, of how wise and beautiful my grandmama was. For a while, I thought she had lost her senses. But I came to realize that that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And over a period of time, and this is what I want to leave with you, over a period of time, I came into the knowledge of how she had raised me. And those things she gave to me is what I want to give to you. And ask you to bring it into the hip-hop, hip-hop generation. Because if you do, we're going to beat that DMC. She gave me things I call the 5 F's. 5 F's. And I want to give you those F's and I'm going to sit down. 5 F's. The first F, she taught me to focus on education, respect, and responsibility. See, you don't put nothing before education. Nothing before education. Because if you get educated, can't nobody take that away from you. That is why she made me go to Atlanta. She placed that above her well-being. She wanted me to become educated. She said, when you get educated, you got to be respectful. Because what you respect, you care about. You don't do harm to those things you respect and value. If you respect something, you care about it, you'll take care of it, and it'll be meaningful to you. And the same thing about responsibility. If you give somebody your word, you need to stick to it. Focus on education, respect, and responsibility, and you will be your own person. Next thing she taught me. She taught me you must have feelings. Feelings. You got to know the whole range of feelings. You got to know when you're supposed to cry and when you're supposed to laugh. The worst thing in the world to me is to see a person crying when they should be laughing. They don't understand the language and the understanding of what caused pain. So you must have feelings one for another. You got to know when you're hurting somebody with your sharp words. You got to know when somebody's hurting you. And the third F is you got to be forgiving. You got to be able to say, I forgive. If you can't forgive, you can't open the door for love. If you can't forgive, you're always on a path to confrontation. If you can't forgive, you can't ever feel the true humanity you have as a person. And the next F was, you got to forge ahead. She says, don't come telling me you black or you poor or you fat or you skinny. I don't care what your circumstance in life, you can rise above it. You got to, as my lady said, you got to believe it. No matter what your circumstances are in life, you can rise above them. You must forge ahead. That's what Grandma Emma taught me. She would, I can't ever remember saying something I couldn't do. You got to forge ahead. You got to persevere. And the last one, my good people. She taught me to keep the faith.
What was that?
Keep the faith. No matter if you're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, or whatever, keep the faith. When your focus becomes blurred and you just can't see or understand, and when your feelings are numb and you don't know what they are, and you can't utter the words to forgive, and you ain't got no strength to take a step, fall back on faith.
All right.
And that's what I learned from my grandma Emma. And that was more valuable to me than any amount of gold or silver she could have left. That's what I'm passing on to you. That's what I hope you will use so that we can combat that disproportionate minority confinement. Thank you, beautiful people, for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walker, for that powerful, powerful story. So we're going to open up for questions in just a second from you all. We want to hear your thoughts and your questions. But I want to take sort of a quick, informal poll really quickly. So how many of you in this room, by a show of hands, have a friend or a relative who was in prison? Raise your hand. Okay, put your hands down. How many of you have a friend or a relative, a young person, maybe about the same age as you, a little younger, a little older, who you know is engaging in behavior that is going to lead them to prison? Raise your hand. Okay. And so, by raising that question, clearly every young person in this room is affected by this with a family member or friend. So I want to kind of pose a question to our panelists. We've talked a little bit about DMC, but can we talk a little more about the impact that it's having on black families as opposed to some of our white counterparts or other racial ethnic groups? Who wants to go first? Any volunteers?
What I'd like to say, can everyone hear me? They're not on?
Okay, come. She said it's on. Is that an on-off button?
Testing 1, 2.
It's on. Speak up.
Testing.
Is it on? Yeah. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Okay. I need to speak louder. Can you hear me? I wanted to say that one of the main areas that I'd like to mention that impacts the family as a result of a child going into a criminal institution is the mental health aspect. Oftentimes the families are disengaged. They may have visiting hours, but those hours are changed periodically. They can't see the child as often as they would like to. The child that's in the institution feels isolated and afraid. If there are any particular physical and or mental health needs that the child may have had prior to going into the institution, they're no longer met. The focus, of course, is not on treatment, it's on punishment. The family is constantly thriving to work with the penal institution, but because their focus is punishment, there are major limitations. Our legal system is such that you always have to wait. You feel like you're in a holding pattern because you don't know how long you're going to be waiting for this youngster to get out of the system and what kind of help could he or she get while they're in the system. And it's just a vicious cycle of not being able to get the services or resources that one may need. There's the depression, the attempt of suicide, and all kinds of things that are part of it that families have to contend with, trying to keep this child whole and healthy and to buy his or her time. And the frightening aspect of it is that there are no guarantees that you're going to survive while you're in prison. There just aren't any guarantees. So the important piece of it is, what does the family need? The family that's on the outside, they need resources and services to assist the child on the inside so that they can all become whole again. And those services just are minimal.
Mm-hmm. Would any of our other experts like to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'll just say that many times the family itself has already been destabilized Addie Richburg mentioned earlier about 1 in 4 young black men, and actually I think the statistics are even more dire now. 1 in 3 young black men are under the jurisdiction of the criminal justice system on any given day at any given time. But now increasingly black women are entering the criminal justice system at astronomical rates. So what's happening with respect to the family? And even when the men are in prison, even when the women are in prison, many times the prisons are far from, and I think that was brought up earlier also, far from the urban areas where the rest of the family is. So that has an impact as well. Issues dealing with telephone. If you have any loved one in prison, you know that when they call collect, and those phone bills are just absolutely astronomical. It's like a monopoly, so you have problems even in terms of communication and staying in contact. So then many times that cycle goes on intergenerationally, because then it goes down to the youth, particularly youth who are at risk for these factors as well.
And I really think that's the most devastating aspect of this prison life for families. It becomes a kind of a culture. When the mother or the father is in prison, you take that individual away from the nurturing of the children and the kind of relationship they're supposed to have. But that's just one dimension of it. What is also taking place is that this person is becoming acculturated to the prison culture. And that then, once he or she is ever relieved, come back and have an impact on the family. And this kind of a cycle continues, because no matter what you say, the best teacher is still the way you behave, what you do. And that's what most people learn from, is how you behave and what you do. And going to prison, you're teaching somebody that this is the path that you might want to follow. So the damage of it is almost indescribable, but it's all harmful.
Okay. Thank you for that. And actually, Dr. Walker brought up a really good point earlier about sort of the relationship that young people have with hip-hop, and there's this generational divide in terms of our older generation not being able to understand it, not being able to relate to it. However, most of you in this room probably, how many of you listen to Lil Wayne? Raise your hand. Right? Everybody in this room, raise their hand. So I want to open this question up to you all, okay? So clearly there are a lot of positive rappers, right, who have positive images and messages in their videos and in their songs. But there's also this really broad spectrum, and there are a lot of negative images in videos and in music. So I'd like to, a question or some thoughts from you all in the audience. How, as young people, do you suggest that we balance that? Okay, because we know that young people are listening to this music and mimicking it. They're dressing like these artists. They're acting like these artists. So how do you all suggest that as young people that you can make sure that other young people that come behind you are able to balance the images that they see that are negative and positive? And there is a microphone right up here. And if there are other people who want to speak, you can kind of line up back here. And then please say your name and where you're from and how old you are.
My name is Mercedes Melendez. I'm from North Carolina, and I'm 15 years old. And I believe that one of the leading causes of DMC is that many people in our generation today are just apathetic about the world. And because they are apathetic, it gives the privilege to those who are not of color to disrespect us and to judge us. And because they judge us, we feel that that's the only way people think of us. So we look at the negative rappers who are saying all these things. We believe that that's only the people that we can trust, and we decide to follow in their footsteps.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ashley Pace. I'm 19 years old, and I'm from D.C. I wanted to say that I feel as though hip-hop is extremely impactful on the youth because of the image and the appeal. And I also feel like it's important to be careful of what we listen to, for the simple fact that the ears are a direct registration into your mind. And we are like computers, so what you place in you is what you're going to get out. And people don't understand that hip-hop subconsciously and consciously sometimes, it messes up what you might feel, your perception of what is real or what's not. Because when you look at the image of what they wear and what they do and how they rap and how they do, it looks good. And I'm not going to deny that I listen to hip hop, but what I do have is a foundation. And in my foundation, my mother has taught me how to sift between the things that are appropriate and the things that are not. And so even if I do listen to it, my mindset is already programmed in a way that I know that this is not going to affect me beyond what I'm hearing. But I really feel as though that if you don't have that mindset or a strong mindset, that it's important to stay away from that type of music, or if you're going to listen to it, at least let it not affect you past what the song is.
My name is Michael Cook, North Carolina. She brought up a good point that the mindset was programmed before it was interacted with the music. Now, the reason I think, like my students, the reason they say they listen to hip-hop because they relate to it 100%. They listen to these rappers because they relate to what's going on in the music. Now, the next question is, how do we catch them before they get to the lyrics? And the only way we can catch them before we get to the lyrics is somehow get them involved with, CIS, the group I'm with, different wild programs. It's like in Winston-Salem where I'm from. We just got to get to them before the music gets to them, and then we got a chance. Now, the thing that young man at the top of the panel brought up was generational curses. When you come home from doing a bid, or when you come home from being locked up 2 or 3 weeks, or when you come home from whatever you're doing, uncle, cousin, daddy, whoever come home, it comes back on me as younger. Like my sister dated a guy that came home, and I picked up the same traits that he picked up. I started following the footsteps he followed. Fast money, fast cars, anything I wanted, and I was 13. I got out the cycle, but 10 of my other friends didn't. So a group of 13 of us, one got out, all of them are locked up or dead. And that's in 23 years. Well, 24 years. I'm 23. So I can handle the hip-hop. I can handle the hip-hop part to get the guys, my players, my students. I can handle the hip-hop part to get to them so I can get through to them and internally motivate them to figure out that it's bigger than what you see. And that's what we got to realize. We got to find a way to get to them so they can get a chance to see that it's bigger than just my pants low, my chain, my bling, my watch, my girls I had sex with. It's bigger than all that. It's getting to the basics and the values. Somebody said values. The values that's put it into you. So once we figure that part out, then our trips to Washington, our trips to Philly, our trips, Washington, Philly, New York, all our trips would be a little bit worth more than just coming and getting out of school and getting away from the house.
Thank you.
Hello, how y'all doing?
All right.
My name is Dewan Coleon, and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I have a media company. I do television and radio. And basically what I wanted to say, I've had the opportunity to be in the studio with T.I., Ludacris, Shawty Low, a lot of the people that y'all listen to, and talk to them, not about, bottles, models, and going to the club and stuff like that, but we try to concentrate on positivity. And the one thing I find is you got to be able to differentiate between the entertainment, because it's all entertainment. Most of these guys, when I talk to them behind the scenes in the studio, they just doing what they doing just to get a check. It's not real. And if they, when I talked to D4L with that song, when he first came out, he didn't want to do a song like that. He wanted to do something positive. He wanted to do, he let me listen to his demo. He had stuff like when Martin Luther King raps on there. But he said the industry made him do a lot of the negativity. And now when he's got to a point where in his career he want to do some more positive stuff. So what I basically want to let people know is that you can't get so caught up in the videos and what they're saying on records, because really it's just an ends to a means. They're just trying to make money. Really, they're just trying to take care of their kids, and it's not real. They want to do something better, but you all have to encourage them to do something better by supporting positive music.
Before Before we get to the next comment, there was a session yesterday on does the media control us or do we control the media? How many of you sat through that session? It was very insightful because there was a representative from our local radio station here, and she talked about how when music by Common or Mos Def or Talib Kweli comes on, it might be great music, it might be positive, but nobody calls and requests it. But Lollipop, on the other hand, is the #1 most requested song of the day on any station that you turn to. So from their higher ups, they're being told, pull that Common record and play the Lollipop record. So you also have to remember that you all have a hand to play in the kind of messages that young people continue to see. Okay, next comment.
Just a comment. This session flashed me back to when, many years ago, I was a teenager. And my mother heard the song by the Last Poets, When the Revolution Comes. She was not pleased. When we started wearing afros, we couldn't get hired by our own people because we had nappy hair. Nikki Giovanni. So the same discussion that took place when I was a teenager, now that I'm a seasoned adult, is being taken place again. So in order to get through what I call them trends, because I see the pendulum flying one end to the other end. Rap is not new. Rap is not new. Isaac Hayes been rapping. You keep going back, you go back to different eras. It's just a different form and a different way of doing it. But you have to begin to, if you want to continue to grow as adults, is to start looking at the music, listening to that music, and dissecting it, and of course looking at it, of course, from the financial end, in terms of what color is running the industry. Can these people then make a living if they did something positive? As an artist, you have to ask yourself that question. So I think healthy discussions like this are important, but we as adults also must become cognizant and must become educated about the music itself. Once my mother began to listen to the Last Poets, once she began to listen to some of the other artists and poets were around, she began to hear something a little bit differently. So I think that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just as a time note, we have about 7 more minutes for this particular part of the session. So if you can make your comments pretty brief, that would be great. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Actually, my name is John Wayman from Central High School. I'm 14 years old, and I actually have a question for the panel. I have a lot of friends at my school that are pretty much corrupted, I would say, by hip-hop ideas and the culture kind of thing. And I don't know, how do we fix that problem without taking them out of the school? A lot of people want to put people in alternative schools, put them in jail, send them home when they get 16. And after a little while, the students, they get used to it, and they plan to do it themselves. I want to know, how do you keep the students in school while still trying to take that environment out of school?
I wrote a little column called Zero Tolerance for Zero Tolerance. And the point was, they've come up with policies whereby every infraction they dispatch you to some alternative place instead of trying to correct the problem there, right in your school. You've got to come up with a set of principles or set of values that transcend what they are doing. And instead of them corrupting those values, you make them so strong that you try to overcome them, and at the same time try to get the powers to be, let them stay there and keep exposing them to it. Because if you send them over to this alternative place, they're not going to do anything but go over there and use that opportunity to do more violent stuff. But if you can find a way to get your people in power to let your values be the dominant one and find a place within your mix to keep those individuals, you stand a better chance, I think, of turning them around rather than exercising them and putting them over there by themselves. Now, that's just my take on that.
Thank you. Next question.
My name is Marquis Santiago, and I go to Andrews in Greensboro, High Point. And my question is for the panel, and it's like, I recently seen on a news channel that we had Jesse Jackson, who's from the older generation, who was one of the main people who was telling us to bury the N-word, and that mostly all the hip-hop and the young people are about is sex and drugs and violence. But he's one of the main ones who's telling us to bury that N-word, and the same people that's got lynched like Martin Luther King and Medgar Evers and Harriet Tubman died for us not to use that word in hip-hop. But the older generations is the main people that keep using it, and it's like kind of hypocritical. So I was wanting to know what the older generation think about that.
No, we agree with you. It is hypocritical. And I told you, people learn more from what you do than what you say. Exactly. And your actions are the real examples and teaching instruments. So you still have a lot of hypocrites. And when you see them, you just got to call them out.
And I had a question for like the young people in here, and I was saying that for the ladies, I mean, it seemed like it's not a lot of ladies. We got people like her, Ashley, who's actually doing stuff, and it's not just for the black females or Latinos, it's like females as general, that men only see what they can only have an opportunity unless you let them, with the way you dress, the way you act, the way you look. Men or guys in my age range only have an opportunity unless you let them have the opportunity. And I think that ladies as in general need to more respect themselves more. And how do y'all feel like y'all have daughters that's going to come up and their examples is from you guys? And I think that you need to have more respect for yourself, and the men will have more respect for you. And for the fellas, you got to treat the ladies with more respect and dignity as men, and give them the opportunity to shine and stay on their grind, and women got to do the same thing. Because if you don't give people that opportunity to do what they can, then there ain't going to be no respect. And that's for men and women. So I think we need to include that.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have time for one more question. We can probably squeeze in two if we make it real quick. It's a statement. Okay, so we can do both.
All right, my name is Ashley Cooper, and I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm 17 years old. Thank you. Okay. First of all, I think we've already addressed the problem that is us versus society, and my solution is, if you know what we're facing, and this is primarily toward parents or anyone who's raising a teenager, if you know what we're facing, then put more positive stuff in our life, like organizations like this, Auntie Rosa's Hip Hop Shop, Girl Scouting, the youth group at church, the choir, the dance ministry. Encloses with those things, and we're a product of our environment. So if there's more positivity in the home, then when we go out, then we'll be a better person.
Thank you very much.
Hey, my name is Devontae Brown. I'm from Central High, and I'm 16. And it is, representing doing the right thing. All right, it is obvious from this discussion, for the most part, we are lacking much knowledge of history because it's not being taught in our classrooms. Right, you feel me? So is there something already being done to change this fact, or do we as youth need to take on this fact?
It's a very good question. Who on the panel would like to address that question? Can I get down here on the end of the panel? Would somebody like to add?
Yeah, I didn't hear the first part of the question.
Okay. Repeat it. Can you repeat the question?
All right. It is obvious from this discussion for that the most part, we are lacking so much knowledge of history because it's not being taught in our classrooms. Is there something already being done to change this fact, or is this a fight as youth we need to take on?
Can I address that
question? We're here today because we're here, or at least a lot of us are here today, because we are trying to make that transition from history to today's current situations. I think everybody in this room recognizes that we're so busy in our school environments trying to make sure that we get the test scores right and get the population counts right and all of that kind of thing. And unfortunately, even as it relates to DMC, the gentleman who from Central High before you, the meanings behind putting people in alternative schools and et cetera. We've downplayed history in our school systems to accommodate other courses and classes that help us to keep various accreditations and various resources flowing into the school system. All of that said, we're going to have to find the importance within who we are to want to know who we are. My opinion of it is, if you don't know your name, there's nothing anybody can call you or that you can be known by. If there is no distinction, if I'm not understanding what I came from or where I came from or how I got there or the evolution, I certainly can't help to make or create or form anybody else. And therefore, it's not just about necessarily Dr. Martin Luther King or Harriet Tubman or any of those people whose names we knew very prominently, but everybody in here, the next minute we leave this room, it'll be history. And everybody in here is a history maker. And it's important to learn about the folks who really made some history so you can understand the design and do something about it. And that's not going to happen unless you insist on finding it. There's not a thing that's not on the internet, I don't think, now. So if we don't sit and do it the traditional way we had to do it in the classrooms and in the class books, we have ways like what these kids are doing and like what some of you at Central are doing. Take history and make it relevant to what's happening today, because the lady, I don't know your name, ma'am, but the lady who came up here earlier that talked about this being similar to what we went through, she's absolutely right. History is repeating itself. 40 years from now, y'all will be standing up here boring some other children about history and telling them about what y'all went through. I'm up here telling you I went through it. When hip hop, no, I don't know what you're saying. I have to ask my kids and interpret it. It's almost like a different language. I like some of it. I like the beat. I'm like Dr. Walker. I like the beat, but that's about as far as I can get. I don't know the artist. But I know it's history. I know there's something being said, and I know there's got to be a way between you and me somewhere. It may mean somebody translating in between. But there's got to be a way between you and me to communicate things like what happened in history, the importance of it, the way people died, the way people got killed, the way people fought. A lot of people had to go to their grave for us to be here in this convention center today. Don't take that for granted.
Excuse me, let me just say, young man, let me just say one final thing, if I may. My major in college is history, and I'm looking at ancient history, and I can tell you with certainty that African Americans have a very rich history and legacy. We go back all the way back to the very first civilization, which was founded by African people. So if you go whether in the Nile Basin or the Sudan or over in Ethiopia, these were black people whose civilization evolved, discovered the calendar and how to irrigate land and things of that sort, and we have that lineage all the way down to today. So we have a very rich history, and it's incumbent upon us to look at our life and our legacy and our past and accentuate the positive. For example, when people see slaves in chains, it depends on what you bring to it, what you see. Certainly that's a bad thing, but I see the great resilience and the strength of those people who endured that kind of hardship. That's your legacy. You endured all of that, and that makes you stronger than most. So we need to see into our history those things that enhance us and make us better. Yeah. But we got to do it ourselves. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And I just want to kind of add to that. I think in working with some of our students, we did a summer training academy where they learned etiquette, professional development, media training, policy training. But the very first thing that we did was a history lesson. How many of you have ever seen Eyes on the Prize, the PBS documentary from back in the day? We had them watch every week. They watched a different episode. But what we did was we tied it to what they were learning about today. And because some of you live in Washington, D.C., when they would see John Lewis marching as a teenager, they had no idea that John Lewis is serving in the halls of Congress right now representing them. And that young people, those were young people fighting on the front lines, marching. Now, you all, okay? And so I think, and how do you do this as young people? You Google everything else. You YouTube everything else. And a lot of those people are still around today to be able to share those experiences and make them very relevant to what you're doing now. So I challenge you to Google that documentary, look it up. And then they were able to see when they saw John Lewis or when they saw these people, they were like, oh my God, that's the dude who got hit in the head marching and fighting for me. So I think that you need to be able to tie it together and make it relevant. So thank you very much for your question. So we're actually all out of time for this particular session, so let's give a warm round of applause for our panelists. Thank you very much for your insight and your knowledge. So we're going to be transitioning to the next section of this summit, from hip-hop to hip-hope, okay? The next part sort of tailors around have a dream, okay? And sort of the promise or the dreams of Dr. Martin Luther King so many years ago and sort of where we are in today. So we've got a couple of panelists that I want to bring up. I'm hoping that they are here. Mr. Darius Willis, who is from Dudley High School in Greensboro, North Carolina. Miss Ashley Pace, who's an alumni of Central High School. Are you here? Mr. Caleb Collins from the Veritas Sports Academy in Kernsville, North Carolina. And Auntie Roz and the Hip Hop Shop. Do you have a representative from that organization? Okay, thank you very much. So to kind of set this particular session up, how many of you watched Boondocks? The Boondocks, all right? Some of you, most of you. Who remembers the episode when they sort of talked about what would Dr. Martin Luther King think if he was still alive, right? What if he was still alive, how would he react to the music that we listen to, right? The way in which our young people act and dress, and the rate at which they're locked up, okay? And so I want you all to think about that, because I honestly want to hear from you all if you had to guess what Dr. Martin Luther King would say. I would really like to know your thoughts. And so Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech is actually quoted more frequently than any of his other works. And if he were here today, one of the things that we believe would happen is that there would be some semblance of a bridge between our young people and our elders and those two generations. And one of the things that has resonated a lot throughout the past couple of days over this conference is that divide. So what I'd like to know, what I'd like to hear from our panelists, okay, is some of their thoughts on sort of where we are in fulfilling that dream that Dr. Martin Luther King laid out so eloquently so many years ago, and sort of where we are in delivering on that promise. And then also I'd like for them to talk a little bit about the work that they do with young people in their communities and the areas in which they live, and what we can do to help fulfill that dream. Okay, so we're going to start down here at the beginning with Mr. Darius Willis.
Good afternoon. Can y'all hear me pretty good? All right, first thing I want to do is I want all the black males to stand again. I know y'all been standing, but just stand one more time. Now, y'all want to know something about ourselves? They call us endangered species. Where are we? We're not all here. We're locked up. We're in the grave. But Martin Luther King would not have that. He would not like it. Y'all can sit down. Now, the way that we can fulfill his dream, because I say Martin Luther King is still dreaming today, because his dream will come true. But the way we're going to fulfill this dream is I'm going to talk to the young and the older adults. adults, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to beat you over the head just a little bit. We have to, as adults, y'all have to stop doubting us. Y'all have to have faith in us. Y'all have to believe in us, like she said. Stop telling us that we're going to be statistics. Stop telling us that we're not going to make it through high school. I'm not saying that everybody does. But there are some out there who tells us, please stop telling me, because y'all are black like me. Stop telling me that I'm going to be a failure in life, because I'm not. Now, younger adults, I'm going to beat you over the head. When they tell you that you're not going to be anything, don't listen to them. When a black person tells you that you're not going to be anything, don't listen to them. But this is what I want you to do. When someone of a different race, different culture tells you you're not going to be good at anything, if he tells you ladies that you're going to be built for nothing but laying on your back, if he tells you fellas that you're not going to be nothing good but stepping on the corner with your pants down, feed off of it. Add fire to the flame. Let it burn inside of you and help you to start to do better and prove him wrong. Prove those people wrong. Because once you prove them wrong, you did something. You did something with your life, and you accomplished part of Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. He wanted to see us successful, and I believe that we can do it. The way that we can do it is that we come together, young and old, stop debating over just hip-hop when we need to debate over issues that's more important, because I don't feel that hip-hop is the major reason why the way economy and life is the way it is now. I don't believe that hip-hop can have an influence over such an intelligent mind of a black young man or female. I don't believe hip-hop is that influential. I don't believe it. If you can prove it to me, I still won't believe it. But I understand it. I understand because I have been there. Some of y'all older adults might not understand. Well, these young men and young women need to stop joining these games. You know why they join. They join for a sense of belonging, a sense of leadership. They want to be led. They have no choice. Some of them have been born into them. But that's where people like I and you all, CIS and GPAL come into play. We have to take these kids, and sometimes adults, we have to bring them in. We have to mold them, create them, make them into better people. Because it can be done. If you don't believe it, turn to the Bible, Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. All right. I am here to tell you that we can fulfill his dream. His dream is not yet over. He is not going to wake up from the dream. The dream is going to be fulfilled. And I'm going to leave you with this word. There are a lot of us who don't have fathers in our own. I myself, he's full of it. But I am going to tell you, just because you don't have a father in the home, there is a father who will provide everything you need. There's a father who will give you what you want. Sometimes he will give you more than what you want. He will provide, and he sent his only son down here to make sure that we can live. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Darius. I think I might need to have you come talk to my kids and inspire them a little bit. So I think you made a really powerful point about not believing what other people say about you. And I want to share a quick story with you all. I met a young man who was 16 years old just a couple weekends ago. And I said, hey, I really want you to get involved in your community. I think you would be great for our council. And I handed him an application. And I realized that he couldn't fill it out. Okay? Couldn't fill it out. And he sort of gave me some excuse, but I picked up the cues and said, hey, do you need me to help you fill it out? And he said, yeah, but I don't think my mom is going to want me to do it. I said, why not? Whose mom would not want them to be on the mayor's youth council? And he said, well, she told me I ain't going to ever be nothing. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to talk to her. And I'm going to tell her how great of an opportunity this would be for her 16-year-old son. Because he wasn't in school at the time. He said he was going to Job Corps. And I said, oh, my God, I see so many more amazing opportunities for you. Job Corps is great. there are so many other things over here. And she came to the table, and I said, hey, I've been talking to your son. He's really amazing. I see some really great things in him. We want to get him onto the council. And she said, he got too many problems. Y'all don't want to deal with him. He had too many problems, and y'all don't want to deal with him. So, and I saw how broken his spirit was, because that is his mother telling him and telling other people that he's not going to be anything. So, I mean, for all of you out there, I know you know how powerful words are, but even if it is your mother, even if it's your father, even if it's somebody that you really, really trust and really, really care about, know that you can still go beyond that and dispel that and do it. And like you said, prove them wrong, okay? So just remember that. And I still remember him to this day, and I'm still trying to find him because I want to get him on my council. So next we're going to go to Ashley. You met her a little bit earlier with her amazing poem, but we're going to bring her back up again. So let's welcome Ashley again.
Hello, everybody. I'm back. I just wanted to say, basically, I really enjoyed what you said, but I was thinking about the fact that I went to this program recently, and it was for ASALA, which is the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And my sister, my little sister, my younger sister, she's not quite little, but younger, and my brother had no idea who Carter G. Woodson was. And it bothered me so much because I spend so much time, doing the things that I do as far as writing the poetry that I write and going the places that I go in order for other people to know. And my own household, my siblings don't even know who Carter G. Woodson is. And it offended me because I felt like, you should know this because this man was the reason why we preserve our black history. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about what it is that he said as well. And I was saying to myself that it's important for us to reach out and to touch our own and to understand the values of what we have in our skin color, in our mindsets, and begin to take back our minds. Because psychologically, we are torn apart. When you think about how to make a slave, when Willie Lynch and Jim Crow got together and they made this thing on how to build a way to make a slave, and they tore them apart, and they actually gave methods, and what they did ultimately in showing them these things is that they tore them down psychologically, which means that physically they were incapable of doing anything because they thought in their minds they could not. So I think that it's extremely important, and as far as me working with a lot of youth in our community, me still being 19, and I go different places, I travel around as much as I possibly can in order to do the things that I do. It is extremely important to be able to tell yourself and to be able to get things foundationally in you so that you can better outreach to other people. Carter G. Woodson made a point of allowing us to preserve our history. He made a career, a whole life out of making sure that we knew who it is that we were as black Americans. And we take that for granted so often. We don't look at it and say, well, this is what this person did for me, so this is what I'm going to do in the future to set the pace for the people that are coming behind me. And I think that it is a generational thing that people have planted seeds far back in order to disgruntle our generation now. But it's not, like I said in my poem, it's not the man who's doing this to us. It's not the white people who keep coming up. It's no longer the pitchfork generation. It's a generation that, even though segregation is ever present, and even though we always want to have some of the same issues that we had back then, it is our opportunity to be better and to do things better and to show that even though I'm black, like I said, my father is German and Irish, part German and Irish, but that has nothing to do with my skin color. When people look at me, they think that I'm just a plain black girl. That has nothing to do with what it is that I actually am. It's important for me to embrace what I am and to show people that it's okay to be different, to be better, and to learn how to, no matter what nobody says about you or what anybody thinks about you, to constantly encourage yourself and be what it is that God has ordained you to be. When you walk in your purpose and your destiny and you realize that my steps are ordered, then you realize and you begin to see that no matter what it is that might distract me along the way, that I could still achieve and be whatever it is that I was intended to be. So I really just wanted to let you all know that I think it's important to be able to, because I used to go to Central High School in Maryland. Let me tell you. No, let me tell you. When I was going to Central High School, I was the worst. You'd never believe it. I used to fight all the time. I mean, my hair pulled back, and people were coming up to the school to fight me. I was fighting girls 6 feet, 5 feet, 4 feet, 2 feet. It didn't matter to me. It really didn't. It didn't matter to me. But I realized that I could be so much more, and what I realized ultimately was that I was different. And I stand before you now as a lady, and before I was always the first one with the attitude and everything else. But I realized that my mom, that God, that the people before me, they set a pace for me to be able to achieve. If I didn't do that, it was my fault. So I really encourage each and every person here and each and every person that's going outside of here to encourage other people that we can be better than what we are, and that we can continue to live in the legacy of the people who have already placed out and ordered our steps for us. Okay? That's it for me.
Wow, that was amazing. And I cannot believe that you're only 19. I think that you got like an old soul and like a 19-year-old body. But I think one of the things that Ashley mentioned without saying specifically is the importance of having mentors and the importance of mentoring other young people. So I will ask the young people in the room, how many of you have mentors in your life? Please raise your hand. Okay. Now, how many of you are mentoring other young people? Raise your hand. Okay. And I think I see more people saying that they mentor other young people than those who raise their hands the first time. So when you leave this room, know that you can be older than the people that you mentor. You can be younger than the people that you mentor. But that is such a powerful tool. And having people in your lives that you can model yourselves after will definitely help take you to that next level and put you on that path to your greatness, okay? So next we're going to have Mr. Caleb Collins from how do you pronounce that organization? Veritas, the Veritas Sports Academy in Kernsville, North Carolina.
How y'all doing? I have a poem I'm going to read. It's called I Have a Dream Too. But before I read my poem, I would like to, go off on what Darius was telling everybody about how people don't have fathers, but there's always a father that everybody can turn to. And a lot of people can, believe what they want to believe and everything, and usually, science is against, believing there's a God. And there's a person who, I couldn't find his name, but who put science with the fact that God is real. And in the Bible, if you didn't know, that God breathed out his mouth stars. And it's facts that he brought to my attention. It wowed me. I went home and told my mom and everything, told everyone in my family. And I hope it'll wow you when I tell you that. So if you have any doubts of who to turn to, God is somebody you can really turn to. But say the world is a golf ball. Now, the comparisons that you make, say, the bridge that's in California, the big, I can't think of the name right now, but it's like the Golden, that bridge. Take a golf ball, put it at the end of the bridge, add another one to it, and it's a star that big. God breathed that out of his mouth. Another comparison you can make, you take a golf ball, put it at the bottom of the Empire State Building, run across the street, and picture 5 more on top of that one Empire State Building. And that's how big another star is. Another comparison is that you take the golf ball, and the dome in Georgia, the big dome is, everybody knows it played football in it. You can fill that dome up 3,000 times with that golf ball. Now it'll be the size of one star that God breathed out his mouth. So for all this hip-hop and hip-hop and everything, with God being that powerful, you don't have to worry about having statistics in jail and everything, because if we have that, we won't have to worry about being in jail. I have to worry about even coming close to it. So people think about, I don't have a father there, I have to go join this gang, and I know sooner or later I'm going to have to kill somebody, because if I don't do that, I don't get a teardrop. But with God, there's no need for that. And Martin Luther King had a thing where he wanted people to see that, but he wanted people to see how this world can be so much better if they just look deeper in what other people tell them. So I wrote a poem called I Have a Dream Too, and I'm about to read it out to you. Do you really think the dream of the king has come true? But the real question is, for who? What phrase comes to your head when you think of the dream and what was said? Is it for all black boys and white boys to be able to sit in a class together and learn? Black and white kids playing the same games while taking turns? What is being told to the kids concerning what their great-great-great-grandfather did? We all know that a powerful dream was told by an intelligent man who was oh so bold. Indeed, the king spit some powerful knowledge in our ear. But what parts did the world actually take time to hear? What about the violence in this world today? Drive-by shootings, gang banging, making it no safe place for a kid to play. Yes, we know that particular part wasn't expressed in the dream, because I bet the king never thought it would get this extreme. So now I guess it's time for somebody else to say that I have a dream one day, so the youth will stop thinking you can't have fun without a gun. Drivers thinking it's okay to have a hit and run. I have a dream this day that people will finally tell themselves what I'm doing is not right in any kind of way. So are we free? Are we free? Are we free at last? Or truthfully, is this future worse than the past?